What is going on, all you card collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan with the 40-Year-Old Collector. Today we're going to look at some grading numbers from the month of October. You might be wondering, hey, why is that important and why should I care? I'm going to tell you right now, strong grading numbers represent great overall health in the hobby. Okay? So here's my thought. There's a lot of big players out there with a lot of money and a lot of cards and a lot of skin in the game. When we see that they're sending a ton of cards in, that means that they feel really, really good about a strong secondary market that they can in turn sell these cards into. I promise you, if they didn't think that there was a market to sell these into, they would not be sending them in. So whenever I see a strong grading report, it lets me know that there's a lot of people out there who still believe the hobby is strong and growing. Let's get into the numbers. So one of the things that jumps out on the page at me here isn't the fact that PSA graded 1 million cards last month, which is a pretty crazy number, or the fact that it's down 3% month over month. I'm going to show you a slide later on where you're going to go, oh my God, that's actually a really, really great number. But what jumped out at me is the gap, right? The delta between PSA and everybody else. 1 million versus the second place, which is at 135,000 cards. That's just crazy. So not a bad month for the other graders though. CSG, right, and their collectible card game division did really well. You know, both of those segments were up 50% month over month, which is crazy growth. Love to see them getting some strength. SGC had a good month too, up 17%. 81,000 total cards graded. I'm going to show you another slide here why I think they might be gaining some momentum. But oh my goodness, poor Beckett. 52,000 cards graded and the only one in the red month over month, down 18%. Ugh. Let me tell you this. When I first started collecting cards, I couldn't afford BGS 9.5s, so I had to buy PSA 10s. That's how long I've been doing this, and that's how far Beckett has fallen. Nowadays, I heard somebody compare a Beckett 9.5 to a PSA 9 in terms of value. I don't think it's gotten quite that bad, but you can certainly buy Beckett 9.5s at a much more of a value price versus a PSA 10. So now, you saw how big of a gap PSA had on all of its competitors. We're just going to look at the PSA grades by category because when the gap is so big and they did over 1 million cards, just looking at PSA keeps the data cleaner and it's also totally relevant to the overall trends of the hobby. So we talked about like trading card games are cemented number one. They're up 5% month over month. Last month they were flat month over month, but still number one in the hobby. It's been that way for months and months and months now. I heard a really smart person talking the other day, and they were just talking about the global exposure that trading card games has, especially Pokemon. This is going to blow your mind. Pokemon Go did $1.2 billion with a B, billion dollars in revenue last year. Pokemon Go, $1.2 billion in revenue.
So sorry.
Crazy. Coming in second place is baseball. Baseball's been in second place for as long as I can remember. Basketball in third and football in fourth. So you're going to see that I specifically called out football on the move and a baseball slowdown. Have you ever heard of confirmation bias? Well, that's this theory that humans want to be right. Shocker. So what we do when we want to be right is we go out and we search for information, thoughts, opinions, data that supports our thoughts, theories, and opinions. There again, confirms our correctness. So I've been collecting football cards for a very long time. I feel like football cards is probably the most underrated segment in all of the collecting industry. I feel like they are going to boom at some point. You look at baseball stands and they're empty. You look at football stadiums and they're full. So, is this the big climb for football? You see in September, they were up 74% month over month. And then you see in October, they were up 1% versus basketball, which was down 7%, baseball, which was down 17%. The reality is, this is data from October, but these cards were submitted far, far prior to that. So I don't think there's enough trends here to support my desire to believe that football is on the up and up. I do think that it is a growing segment, and I do think eventually it will become the number one non-trading card game segment in all of this. So another place where I think is really, really going to pop is soccer. Once the world catches on to soccer cards and card collecting in general, soccer has more popularity than Pokemon, and you see where Pokemon's ranked here. So I haven't made an investment into soccer cards yet, but I very well could in the future. Let's see what else we got here. Okay. So here's what I was talking about. So PSA graded over 1 million cards, 34,000 per day. That is just a bonkers number. And here, when you look at this graph, you're going to see that even though they graded 1 million cards, they were still down a little bit month over month. Okay, but they're still 9 times their competitor, which is a great view of the overall market. Again, looking at this chart, you'll see that there's ups and downs and wiggles and waggles, and that's just part of anything. Nothing is ever up and to the right. But the overall trend for the last 20 months in regards to items graded is up and to the right. Always a good sign. Another thing that you're going to see here is, check this out. Look at their September to October drop in 2021. That is a significant, significant drop. Okay? Now look at their drop in 2022. Look how close those September and October numbers are. Remember when I said that down 3% month over month wasn't a bad thing? When I see their year over year drop is much far less than it was previous year, that is a good thing. Again, just another strong indication of the overall health of the card market right now. So here's another fun thing to look at, items graded by era. So this is broken down by all of the different companies, and it's going to show you kind of where the trend's in and who's submitting what and when. So PSA and Beckett, really strong in the modern era, right? Like the 2020s, the 2010s, even into the 2000s. That is where their bread and butter is. That's where most of their cards are coming from. You see in the later eras, 70s, 60s, 50s, and later, not a ton coming into PSA, even less coming into Beckett. But then you look at SGC and CSG. Look at those numbers. 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, and earliers, especially SGC, 12.5% from the 50s and earliers. What is going on? I am going to tell you what I think is going on, and look at all of that. That is amazing data right there. So you see that there's a vintage slant, right, for these other companies? Here's why. Anybody seen this card? Anybody heard any stories about this card? This is a 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle 9.5 that recently sold for $12.6 million in an SGC slab. I want to call this out. This isn't just the most expensive baseball card that's ever sold. This was the most expensive piece of sports memorabilia to ever sell. Now, I'm telling you, if I have vintage and I think that it's in good condition, where are you going to send your cards? If you know about this card, if you know about this sale, you're going to be sending them to SGC because SGC has proven that they can get the most expensive sale of all time in the vintage. Amazing, amazing stuff. Now, this looks at the gem rate breakdown, which I thought was really cool data. So out of the cards that are sent in, how many of them get a Gem Mint 10? Now, you would expect this data to be low for the older cards because there's just not a lot of Gem Mint 10s out there. But a couple things that really, really jumped out to me was, look, out of all of the cards submitted to SGC and CSG, all of those vintage ones, 0.1% from SGC got gem. Nothing else. How crazy is that? Even in the PSA holders, you look at, they have 1.5% from the 70s, 1.3% from the 60s, 1.4% from the 50s and earlier. And you got at least 0.5%, 0.2%, 0.5% that came back as Gem Mint 10. CGS and SGC is tough on vintage. That's probably why they were able to flip that Mantle 9.5 for $12.6 million. People have a lot of respect and people have a lot of trust in the grades that these companies are giving out in regards to vintage cards. And then you look at Beckett, look at BGS. Are they a little bit soft on modern? Those gem rates for 2020s, those gem rates for 2010s, those are pretty high. If I have 2020 cards, I'm still sending them to PSA because I know that I'm going to get a premium to it. But if I have a card that might get a PSA 9, but I feel like it could be a 10, maybe you submit it to a BGS and get a BGS 9.5, knowing that you're still going to get a premium on a BGS 9.5 versus a PSA 10. I don't know, but this data is super, super interesting to me, and I hope you find value in it too. As I mentioned that, I am going to take a pause and ask that if you're enjoying this video, if you find this data relevant, I would love it if you subscribed, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I got a whole lot of cool stuff that's coming out like this. Put a ton of time into building this. I do it because I love it, but I also do it because I want to share it with as many people as I can. The best way for me to share it with more people and educate more people on the hobby is by getting those subscriptions, getting those like buttons, and having people smash that bell. So thank you for that. At the end, what do I always say? Collect what makes you happy. Here are some of my big takeaways from this week. PSA is the big dog in grading, right? PSA is far and away the one to beat. I don't know if anybody can catch up because the delta is so big, but I am really, really excited about the trend towards technology in the grading company. The grading volume continues to rise. Again, seeing that PSA had a lower drop from September to October in 2022 than they did in 2021. Great news for the hobby. Great news for all of us who are in it for the long run. Like I said, the less year-over-year dip is the biggest thing that I've seen in this whole thing. Loving to see that up and to the right trend over the last 20 months. That only means good stuff for us. And at the end, buy some frickin' toys. And by that I mean, if you haven't started investing in Pokemon cards, maybe it's time to dip a toe in the water. True story, I made my first Pokemon card investment the other day. My daughters just got into it. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. We went to the local collection store, which sells Pokemon cards. They talked to us about things. We bought 1 box to open and 1 box to keep. So hey, maybe it's time to go out there, buy some toys, teach some youngsters about collecting, and get in on this craze we call Pokemon cards. So as always, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed